Aloha. Welcome to American Issues Take One. I'm Tim Apicella, your host, and today's title is Trump's executive orders are excessive. Many will be challenged in court. On day one of Trump's presidency, he was in the Oval Office. He signed 44 executive orders, many of them being signed with questions from the media. Not paying attention to what he was signing on many of those orders. He was just signing and passing the orders off to his assistant. I think now we stand at 200 orders being signed, and that's a lot. So we want to talk about those orders today. We want to focus on those. But here's a few that might grab your attention and make you want to stay tuned here. Number one was the big one, is that immigration, ending birthright citizenship. In stark of the 14th Amendment, Section 1, I'd like to know how that goes, but we'll see. Giving pardons to over 1,500 January 6th convicted felons, those that beat the crap out of police with rods, flagpoles, and sprayed them with bear mace. They're now on the street. I love how Donald Trump supports law enforcement by releasing 1,500 convicted felons that beat the crap out of our police. But be as it may, he did. I think a new one that a lot of people aren't aware of, and all you MAGA folks and all you Democrats that stayed home, you might want to listen to this one. Executive order reversing Biden's executive order of 14087. That one is the one that lowered drug costs. And so all you folks that are on $35 insulin, you may not be much more in the future. I think for now you're protected, but also the $2,000 cap on Medicare. These drugs that are expensive, Donald Trump just bowed down to Big Pharma and left you folks sitting outside the doorway. So as they say, news at 11, we'll see how that goes for you. And then an executive order that takes the United States out of the Paris Climate Accords. So these are just a few. With me to discuss these many executive orders is our esteemed guest, Ben Davis, Emeritus Professor of Law at
University of Toledo.
My co-host, Jay Fidell. Welcome and thank you so much. And this next question is going to be for both of you. But before I give the question, I want to just list off or rattle off some more executive orders that I think are fairly significant. As I mentioned, the Paris Climate Agreement, ending birthright citizenship, withdrawing from the World Health Organization, the United States reckoning only two sexes, male and female, declaring a national emergency on energy, therefore, taking out of the Paris Accords, renaming the renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, stating that if you're looking for asylum into the United States, that you'll remain in Mexico, reversing the DEI programs that have been put in place, and Department of Government Efficiency, establishing that as official. And so there's just a potpourri of executive orders. So let's go to you, Jay, first. Jay, of the 200 executive orders that Donald Trump has signed, which ones do you find the most shocking or grievous? I mean, which ones are the most significant in your mind?
Well, the pardons, attempts to legitimize what happened on January 6th. It's just, further escape from responsibility for him. I think birthright citizenship is clearly unconstitutional. Withdrawal from the Paris Agreement really offends me. What he's saying is climate change is a hoax. The energy emergency, drill, baby, drill, prioritizing fossil fuel over renewable energy. That is, again, denial of climate change. The World Health Organization is going to leave us with pandemics. Guarantee. Ask any medical professional. He banned federal agencies from engaging in actions. This is my favorite, in terms of the law, that could, quote, unconstitutionally abridge Americans' free speech. He's not going to do that. He's going to abridge free speech. That's what it's all about for him. He rolled back transgender protections, diversity, as you said, and general. Oh yeah, and he extended TikTok, the ban against TikTok by 75 days. And he required federal employees to return to work 5 days a week. And this is really interesting. He removed the federal job protections for them, so he can fire the senior ones. Um, he's actually taken one stroke in one day to put us all into chaos, because a lot of these are completely unconstitutional or illegal or against any kind of rational policy. He turned the country upside down, and he's lost all respect from overseas, at least the world liberal order. So the guy is really destructive. This is a sort of arrogant, anti-intellectual. It's unhinged. It's all the words that people have used about him come current in one day. It's amazing. So don't ask me for my favorite, Tim, because they're all my favorite.
I won't do that, but I will ask you this. We talked about buyer's remorse from those that voted for Donald Trump, be it the MAGA group or the GOP that voted for him, or even the Democrats that either stayed home or they voted for him. To what degree do any of these executive orders translate into buyer's remorse for those folks? I can think right now about reversing Joe Biden's attempt to cut drug costs. I mean, I'm sorry, but MAGA people get sick too, and they have to buy very expensive medicine like Democrats. We all bleed. What executive orders can you think of that will constitute some buyer's remorse on both sides of the political spectrum?
Well, we haven't seen the legislation yet, but watch out. He's going to try to undo Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. That's coming. But I mean, all of this shows a direction. And when he starts trying to implement them, the ACLU, which has already filed a suit on birthright, will be active in courts. This is going to create a huge flood of litigation on nearly everything that you mentioned as illegal, unconstitutional, or completely outside of his powers. So I am very worried about this, and I think that people will get the idea. It will reach these crazy proclamations will reach everybody. Now, I don't think Elon Musk cares much about it, and the very wealthy guys, they don't care much about it, and the ones who gave him $1 million to sit in the front row, I don't think they care much about it. But I think it's going to affect their employees. I think it's going to affect every working person in the country and every person who needs help from the government. At the end of the day, I wrote a commentary called Metamorphosis, where somebody who sounds like the character in Franz Kafka's story wakes up one morning and finds out that the metamorphosis involves a person who wakes up as a bug, and he finds out that his vote for Trump is backfiring on him and his life is ruined. And I think that that's what's going to happen here. Give it 6 months, and this is all going to play out. And I feel there will be a lot of buyer's remorse all over town, because collectively and individually, a lot of these proclamations will undo their lives. It will affect everyone, but some people will be starving on the street. So I don't think the country can tolerate that. I don't think the Trump community can tolerate that. I wonder, though, and this is a big wonderment, I wonder if his MAGA legislators in Congress can tolerate that. But they're going to hear from their constituents. In fact, the remorse is already showing on the internet. The remorse is coming by emails at many a day. And the alternative media, the podcasts are just buzzing with outrage. So if you're looking for indications of buyer's remorse, those indications are already there.
All righty. Thank you, Jay. Ben, same question to you. Of the 200 odd, some extremely odd, 200 executive orders that Donald Trump has put into play, Which ones are the most startling to you?
Well, for me, I kind of look at them as a whole, right? And rather than specific ones, but to look at the package of the, I don't know, 100, whatever he did, right? And, the basic view that I have, and this is maybe Jay and I will disagree a little bit on this point, is that he's basically doing us going back to the late 19th century manifest destiny kind of vision that he actually even talked about in his inaugural speech, right? And if you go back to that time, there's a great Rudyard Kipling poem called White Man's Burden, which sounds completely incongruous today, but you got to read it. But it was basically saying how wonderful the British Empire was for civilizing the world, right? But the twist here is that instead of it being quote unquote British, it's the American rich white man's burden. That's the way I looked at it. That's the way, if you look at the package together, it really seems to me at least, to express that. Immigration is basically saying, hey, we have a lot of dark people coming in at the southern border, so we're going to stop them. Do you know that there are 10,000 people who had their flights or their interviews canceled this week? 10,000 people who had gone through all the refugee so it's not undocumented illegal. These were legal going through the process. 10,000, they're estimating, were canceled yesterday, okay, of these people who've been left in limbo. Just think of that. Now, one thing I found really interesting is that with all this emphasis on the southern border, there's nothing that is written about people coming in on tourist visas at the airport. And I kind of looked up, okay, so who needs a visa to come into the United States and who doesn't? There are 43 countries in the world who have people in them that don't have to get visas. Of those, only 6 are not in Europe. Gee, what does that say to you? We're going after the southern border, but we're not hassling the people at the airport. I wonder what, you can see where I'm going.
Yeah.
I watched, instead of watching the inauguration, I watched the Martin Luther King celebration that was done down in Atlanta. And Dr. Bernice King, his daughter, said something to me that really struck me, which was, all these sort of DEI stuff was really just a new play or a morphing of what was called the Southern Manifesto in 1956. So after Brown was decided, 1956, it was massive resistance. You may remember that term, right? But it's morphed into massive resistance with regards to not only minorities, but to women, gender, all that. It's the same kind of massive resistance stuff that's put in place there. With regards to what's going on in the government, essentially it's to create the executive branch that is completely beholden to whatever he wants as his whims, right? I am the king sort of thing. And then I thought the regulatory freeze and the hiring freeze were kind of interesting, because what that means, to me at least, is that the government's not going to work as well as it could on the current stuff. And it's not going to be able to adapt to any new things that are out there. And so people will be frustrated with the government. And of course, then they'll try to privatize it all, right? Because they see the government doesn't work. Well, we set it up to fail, so to speak. Finally, there is, kind of putting forth a Praetorian guard of all the various chairs and vice chairs, cabinet and sub-cabinets that nominees he's put in place, who essentially have a task of weaponizing every part of the government here to essentially have this vision of America, which is essentially that of very rich white men, to be put into place. So I say to the 3 out of 5 white men who voted for him that if you're not rich, you just got played. And then for everybody else, I'd say if you voted for him, you also got played too. Because I don't think, and this is where I maybe disagree with Jay a little bit, I don't think they care if there are people in the streets. Mm-hmm. We have homeless people already. They don't care about them. We have a million people who died from COVID. They didn't care about them. So why would you think magically they would now sort of have some remorse? In fact, you even had a bishop who called him out for mercy, and he came back and essentially insulted the Episcopalian bishop. So my view is that absolutely that's what's going on, and what you have to do, and that's just, I think, dissent. Okay, there is the other term of opposing and opposition, and I certainly don't have anything against that. But the main thing is that you have to fight back in the way that you can, and it could be whatever way, and joining with others to fight back against it. But trust me, these are very powerful people who don't care about you. They don't care about you unless you're rich and you are white, actually. By the way, I just wanted to note, remember our old friend Vivek Ramaswamy, Mr. Number 2 over at Doge? What happened to him? He just got iced out of Doge. Who's left? Our Afrikaner American. There we go. Good.
He was of the wrong persuasion, perhaps.
Yes.
You had mentioned a point I wanted to pick up on. You had mentioned that there was 10,000 approved individuals for citizenship to come in. One of the executive orders Donald Trump enacted, and I think this is once again disgusting because it reminds me of the days when the United States pulled out and we left the Kurds behind to get slaughtered by the Turks. We pulled out, we said goodbye. They waved to us as the tanks were rolling out of Syria. Well, guess what he did? He signed an executive order that for 1,660 Afghans that helped the United States troops during the Afghan war, that helped us translate, provide information, who are deep kimchi right now because they're targets on their backs. We were about ready to bring them in, and they had gone through all the process, and they're basically just waiting to get on a plane. Those flights have been canceled. Yeah. Donald Trump just signed an executive order putting a knife in each of those backs of those Afghans that risked their lives to help the United States of America. I find this, once again, incredible to have to look and read up on this executive order.
Yeah, and of course the rule of law has gone out the window with the pardons, right? Of all those people, the law and order protecting. It's only protecting the police when they're beating on people who are not white, right? You know what I mean? That's basically it. Otherwise, you're going to pardon the people when they go after them. I mean, he just pardoned some police officers down in D.C. who apparently, car chase of a guy on a scooter. The guy died. The police got charged and convicted of some kind of a bad thing, and he just pardoned them, as part of all he's doing. So, it is pretty sad, yeah, but it's what the people seem to have wanted, and so there they go. They got it.
It reminds me of that video that we all saw about the lady talking about the Democrats who voted for Trump, and there was a quotation from it I'll never forget, and the quotation was, "Just stand there and take it."
Yeah.
And I believe that some of these folks will be doing just that. Okay, thank you, Ben. Much appreciated. Jay, we have an avalanche of executive orders, over 200. It's overwhelming to try to digest 200 executive orders, not to mention the 80 that he voided for President Biden. Is there a strategy to flooding our market with executive orders that we can't track it, overwhelm us, clog up the court systems as they're going to be legally challenged? Was there a strategy to this, or he was just trying to show that he's president from day one and that he can do all sorts of authoritative powers?
Well, that's possible. It's also possible that he's out of his mind. But I think there is a strategy. The strategy is to do enough of this so that people are out in the streets protesting. That's already started. It's happening on the web right now. People are really wondering what he's doing, because even if you would go along with some of these orders, there are others that nobody rational is going to accept all of this. They have to be completely in the cult to accept all of this. It's all collectively, as Ben said, it's Looney Tunes. So, I think They didn't care, Ben. I would agree with you. And they're stupid. I hope you would agree with me. Maybe the two are linked, not caring and being stupid. You know, he warned us about a lot of this stuff, but we didn't believe it. Okay, now we're getting to believe it. And so I think the strategy, to answer your question, is that he wants to create chaos because he thinks that's the way to a dictatorship. That's the way to a fascism. That's what happened in Germany back when. This guy could be worse. And if he gets enough people excited, they're out in the streets, not only on the web, but they're out in the streets. And when that happens, he's going to trot out the army under his brand new and irresponsible DOD, defense secretary. And when that happens, he's going to have even a larger opportunity to exercise dictatorship. So if you ask me whether there's a strategy, I think that's the strategy. You do these crazy proclamations on every level. You get so many people so excited that they start protesting, and when they do, you use the Insurrection Act of 1870 or whatever it was, and you come down on them with the army, which should not be doing domestic things. So there's all kinds of risks all along the way, but his method, his madness, is to become a dictator, and I think that's what he's trying to do. It's not any one of these things, as Ben and I agree. It's all of them. It's collective. But after a while, maybe soon, people are going to get so outraged with the collection that they're going to go out in the street, and that is going to be a problem because that's exactly what Trump wants.
There is protest in the street, and I don't know to what degree that is always effective. I suppose silence is worse. But isn't this going to be one in the courtroom? The court challenges to all these executive orders.
Big question. That's a big question, Tim. If you see the Supreme Court as governing it all, then there's no relief there because they're useless. But the Supreme Court only takes 50, 60, 70 cases a year on cert. And it's not that many. There are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of cases that go to the district court, and many cases, tens of thousands that go to the courts of appeal. So the question is, in the short term, how are these new judges going to conduct themselves? Now, Trump did over 200 judges, all right wing, and Biden in the last month or two did another 200 judges. So I guess we can have some confidence in Biden's appointments, and maybe some level of confidence in Trump's appointments, not the ones like Eileen Cannon, but others. And maybe there could be a justice system left. But remember, Trump will attack the justice system. He's really good at that. You got to give him credit. He completely mucked it up in all the proceedings against him. In every single one. They never caught him. He was Teflon Don. And so I'm not sure that even if we had good judges that do the right thing, whether Trump can't screw it up somehow. But I agree with you. We can't rely on Congress. We can't rely on the Supreme Court. The only thing that's left is the good faith of judges sitting, having taken an oath to defend the Constitution as they saw it. But it's not a happy time.
Well, speaking of court cases, Jay, again, this flood of 200 executive orders within a couple of days of his presidency, to what degree do you think that was encouraged by the Supreme Court decision that the president has immunity as he's performing his task or job?
Oh, no, it's all from Trump. The whole immunity thing came from Trump. And this idea about skinnying down the government came from Trump. I don't think there's a whole lot of causation there. I think he meant to do this a long time ago, and I guess he was careful about telling everybody about it. But you could see it creeping out from his remarks.
Yeah, but the decision certainly gave him some buoyancy in his desire for immunity.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, the immunity governs, and he'll be able to do anything he wants, including shooting people on Fifth Avenue. No kidding, no joke.
Yeah.
and be able to terminate all these employees. He'd be able to do a lot of the things on that list you read from. Some of the things he should be stopped at in court. But who knows what happens, because the important ones will get up to the Supreme Court and they are unreliable. So I hope that answers your question, but I feel that the immunity is one leg of the stool, and his long time determination with Dodge and Elon Musk, um, determination to cut back the government. And, he's a micromanager. That's the way he manages companies. And he'll micromanage the government. He doesn't want anybody telling him what to do.
Yeah, but his companies have 20 employees. We have 330 million in our population. So kind of tough, but I see your point. Okay, thank you, Jay. Ben, I'm thinking again, I'm always thinking about the mega loyal, the followers, the voters that put Trump in office again for the second time. I'm thinking about the Democrats that stayed home or actually switched to the Republican Party to put Donald Trump back in the office again. And I'm thinking about Donald's embrace of the uber rich, the oligarchy that we see forming before our very eyes. And I guess my question is, if you're a MAGA person that has, you're down and out and you have nothing but the next paycheck or the next Social Security check, and that's all you got, how does that rub? How's that rub you when all these executive orders seem to be paving the way for an oligarchy and unbridled power for the president?
If you're that person, one of the interesting things with all those 100 or whatever number of executive actions that he did is there's only one about the cost of living. And you know what it says? People in government should do stuff to try to keep the cost of living down. That's it. There's only one. When you think about all those folks who said, well, my grocery prices were lower and all that, with all this other stuff that he was doing. If you're one of those people, I'm thinking that you will be disillusioned, but that's been a pretty common game I've seen certainly on the Republican side for a long time, where you try to get sort of a populist or cultural based effort to get voters in, but that when you're in office, you essentially do things for the corporate class or the very rich. I mean, the whole idea that we came back with Ronald Reagan, remember, was that we're going to do tax cuts and that was going to make the economy grow tremendously for everybody. Remember that?
Yeah.
And as we saw the tax cuts, the famous Laffer curve, which I cannot believe that guy's name was that, because it was a laugh, his curve. But it's that kind of thing where all of the benefits for 40 odd years have gone to the top 10% of the economy. I think somebody said that the number was $50 trillion came from the poor and middle class up to the top 10% in the country. Just think about that over this period. I mean, it's such a phenomenally large number, right? And the effort is always to do the divide and conquer, where you're telling these people that really your problem is because of those illegal immigrants. Then it's those legal immigrants. Oh, there's these black people, or it's these women over here. And, you're not, we're all unmeritorious, right? That's, it's all that kind of, like, your housing problem is because of those illegal immigrants. It's not because of all those hedge funds that have bought up all the single family houses that used to be the ones that were the starter houses for so many people back in the day. And then they jacked the rents up on everybody. I mean, I think the game was kind of given away by the Treasury guy Besant when he was having his confirmation hearing, where he was against increasing the cap on Social Security to people who. So instead of being at $178,000, it capped at that, it'd be $1 million or 10 million or $1 billion. And he said no, because those are the people who make the country run. So we can't have them have to pay Social Security. And then we talked about increasing the minimum wage from the current federal $7.25. He tried to dodge it to the state, say, well, that's a state issue. But in fact, then he said no, he was against that. Now, to put that into context, and I saw this when Reverend Barber spoke at the Martin Luther King thing, back with the March on Washington days, 1963. One of the claims at that time was, guess what? Increase the federal minimum wage. 1963, okay? And if you adjusted what they asked for inflation, guess what the federal minimum wage would be today? $18. And it's $7.25.
Mm-hmm.
So you see, I mean, it's a long-standing. To me, that's the game. Is the rich? It's the winner-take-all kind of situation where now the winners are now going to be able to take all, both in the economy but also in the government. Kleptocracy and the rest of it. I want to add one other thing. Is I don't know if you saw this about the cryptocurrency token that Trump put out 2 days before the inauguration. Well, there was a moment in time where that was worth, I heard, $82 billion and made him one of the top 25 richest people in the world for a little bit there. Now, it's all just smoke and mirrors, okay? But, and that's a pure game of how to influence him and put money to him to get what you want out of government. It's just a pay-to-play scheme, right? That's what we got. And unfortunately, the levers to fight against that seem at this point to be kind of limited. We have these cases in the courts that are happening, and that's good for the legacy entities that do that kind of thing. We do have the states getting involved. That's good too, because they were successful last time with Trump with some of the things that he did. And there's just got to be some ways to find the dissent, but it's very hard. Yeah. Very hard, because they're trying to scare you very much. I saw something recently talking about people worried about their pensions, that kind of thing, Medicare, Medicaid, all that stuff, going after all that. People, impoverishing everyone, basically, for the benefit of his rich folks.
Before we conclude and get final thoughts, I want to follow up. I don't know if you saw an announcement last evening or not. It's a $500 billion initiative on artificial intelligence. Donald Trump brought in the CEO of Oracle, and I can't remember the other CEO. Again, catering to Silicon Valley and trying to, under the smokescreen of trying to beat China to AI technology, and throwing all sorts of money at AI without necessary smart regulatory oversight of AI development. And we've been told for years that AI can be a real beneficial tool, but at the same time, it has to have some regulatory oversight to make sure it doesn't overtake humanity and or all the jobs that people work. So right. I wonder if you saw that, and I just want to get your quick thoughts on that.
Sure. So I did see that, because there was a guy from SoftBank in Japan who was saying he's in for $100 billion. There was the ChatGPT, Sam Altman said he's in for it, and Larry Ellison over at Oracle, and the three of them, and it was a big announcement of $500 billion. At which today Musk came out and said, well, actually, they don't have that kind of money. Is that the guy from SoftBank has a maximum of $10 billion right now. So when I start to see that, I say, this is the classic, what we used to call in Silicon Valley, vaporware. We go and announce this big $500 billion thing, and then, you're never going to see that kind of investment. This was, what was it, Foxtrot in Wisconsin. They were announcing big factories, and ultimately they didn't put anything in place. So Trump is trying to address his weakness on the infrastructure issue that he had all through remember his infrastructure week every week with him? So he said that's sat there. So he tried to do a little infrastructure the first week there to, kind of get rid of that image. But to me, it's all smokescreen. It's all, it's vaporware. In other words, vaporware is what is a company announces some incredible new thing that they have that they're going to bring out to sort of slow down their competitors, right? But they actually don't have anything that's really ready to go to market for at least 3 or 4 or 5 years. That's the way I looked at that when I saw that. I said, vaporware, one more time.
We may see the next 4 years with a whole lot of vaporware. I appreciate that perspective, Ben, and it's spot on. So we've run out of time. And let's go get our final thoughts. Jay, starting with you.
Well, I'll go a step further than Ben on that. I think the next part of Trump's initiative is going to be to control information. That's one of the reasons he had all those guys sitting in the front row, because it's all about information. And that's one of the things in the TikTok, the extension of the TikTok termination of the ban. He's going to try to control TikTok either by having the government invest or Elon Musk invest or both. And then he's going to, give us social media that defends him, defends all his policies. But I also agree that a lot of these policies are going to fail. That's what happened in his last administration. He'd make all these promises, and very few, if any, of them actually came true. And his promises before the election, they didn't come true. They won't come true. And these proclamations, a lot of them won't come true. They're not doable. And so, it's important for the secondary media, the alternative media of which we are a part, to point out how many of them work and how many of them don't work, how many of them are doable, and how many of them, fall by the wayside. As that project that Ben just mentioned. So I feel that the failures are going to be brought to the country's attention through the secondary media. It's not just us talk about this. They're all going to talk about it. And they're going to talk about his failures. And his job is going to be to suppress that conversation. He's going to suppress it through social media. He's going to suppress it by attacking, the legacy media, the mainstream media. He's going to find scapegoats. You alluded to that, Ben, too. He's going to find scapegoats to blame someone else on his failures. And so, the good news is there is a secondary media. The good news is it's still up and running. He might attack the platforms. And I worry, for example, about YouTube, big platform, but sitting, on that row of seats there with those CEOs, the tech CEOs, was Pichai, and Pichai controls YouTube. So if YouTube goes away, a lot of the secondary media goes away. All I'm saying is it's the job of the secondary media to keep the conversation going. I also want to add one other thing, which I think is worth mentioning, and that is everybody assumes the tech oligarchs will get more powerful, and he will control them more, and they will affect communications and distribution of information. But there's a fly in that ointment. And that is that they are public companies. Yes, they have stockholders. Yes, they have directors. Yes, they have managers. And they may not be able to get away with doing some of the things that Trump wants them to do. So over time, there are stockholders that are going to say, no, you can't do that. And the CEOs may have to respond just as a matter of holding on to their jobs.
Thank you. Ben, your final thoughts, please.
On the whole, it's a difficult week for a lot of people to watch, and maybe a lot of people are feeling uneasy, scared, and all that. And my take on it all was that it's just one more in a long series of efforts of domination that have happened in this country. It's a little more sophisticated than it's been in maybe some other settings. But it's not so much not lose hope, but it's just that you find what you can do to make the space where you're at to be more coherent with what you believe, and to find other people who are doing things that are more coherent with what you think is, what is right and what is true. It could be your faith. Remember that Episcopal bishop who asked Trump to his face to give mercy, and you saw the physical reaction of him and J.D. Vance to that, and it spoke eloquently about who they are to have a bishop speak to them like that. It might be in your church, in some kind of church activity. It might be in your neighborhood. I don't know exactly. It might be writing letters to the editor at your paper. But the thing is that I try to emphasize is, FDR is the only thing to fear is fear itself. And what they are trying to engender in you is fear. And so that you will be quiet and you will be supplicant. And you don't have to be that. You don't have to be that. You can be who you are. You are a good person. And, the decent things that you were raised to believe were decent are still decent, no matter who the crazy is up top who's trying to make you feel like what their worldview is the right one. So, that's kind of my approach to it is, I wish well to all the people who know the levers of legality to be able to bring the lawsuits to block the thing and all that stuff. I wish it well to the people who do things in Congress to slow down the crazy as much. I wish well to the people in government who do the things to make sure that we don't go crazy with regards to the kinds of things that these people want to do. They're very good at doing those things to slow down these presidents along the way. And so, yes, we have a sophisticated group of people who've worked very hard, and they're going to lose again. It's going to make it a little harder, but I guarantee they're going to lose again. Because why? Because what is it? The long arc of history bends towards justice, and they are the unjust. And personally, I think that whether they know it or not, they're kind of evil, okay? And we have to fight evil.
All right. I would like to thank my esteemed guest, Ben Davis, my co-host, Jay Fidell, and before I sign off, I'd like to tag on to the point that Ben made, and that is fear. And the bishop's name that basically lectured Donald Trump, her name was Marian Edgar, and she said, "You've installed a climate of fear, and you need to have mercy." Ben, you cited perfectly FDR's "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." And at the last show, I mentioned what the English had. They had their slogan, "Keep calm and carry on." So as I sign off, let's just all remember to hang on, tune in, and most importantly, stand up. I'm Tim Apicella, your host for American Issues Take One. Join us next week. And until then, aloha.